And welcome everybody to another wonderful, infotainment, educating, infotaining. I think I said educating, infotaining, whatever edition of We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. I'm your host for this empowerment segment, Brother Ron. You got the one and only. Yes, sir. So one and only Judge Joe Brown on the air. And we're going to have a great, lively discussion. A lot of things happen out there in the world today that we need to talk about. But before we get started, happy Mother's Day to you all. Happy Mother's Day to you all. Happy Mother's Day to you all. Happy Mother's Day to you all who's out there who are moms or, you stepmom or foster mom, or you just, whatever you do. If you providing nurturing and lovable moments and care and investment in other human beings, you are a mom to me. So thank you all for doing that. And we're not going to hold y'all too long, but we may hold y'all because we have the man of the moment, the one that you all demand the most to hear from, a guy who's very much provided a lot of information and support in the gap that we currently find ourselves in as a people, as a nation, and in the world today, the one and only Judge Joe Brown. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, young brother. How's everything with you? By the way, don't you quit your day job and take up singing as a profession.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't even know if I have a day job, but I want to get to you because first and foremost is a blessing to have you around still. Like, you look at all the losses we have taken over the last several years, and you have been a voice that's been consistent and also standing on your square and providing some type of compass for our people in this time of uncertainty. So I want to thank you for doing that, sir, because there's a lot to unpack, and a couple of, we don't have enough time to unpack it all, but it's a blessing to have a voice like you still around, providing food for thought and just provoking thought among the people. We really appreciate it.
Well, I do what I can, however that goes. So I try to spread the word. They used to say, the Nazis did, tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anybody to believe it, including the liar who's telling the lie. But they said the implacable enemy of the lie is the truth. So I like messing with that kind of folk. So I try to tell the truth. I don't give a damn. The only time I lie is when I'm trying, I'm too old, really worried about it now. I got a new set of moves, but the only time I used to lie is when I was trying to get laid. So,
Right.
It is what it is, all fair in love and war. But now I guess it's war, but I still have some principles. I try to tell the truth. And when I see a sleaze bag, a drifter, a pimp, a hoe of the movement or whatever we're trying to do, I expose them. And people say, you shouldn't be so judgmental. I said, what the hell you think I've been doing for the last 30-some years? But being a judge, even those biblical scriptures says you shall not accept judges and potentates and rulers and kings and all of that. Well, I guess I fit in that category, kind of a village chief, and so it's my job. Since these preachers have turned too often into being pulpit pimps instead of preachers who talk about sin, well, nobody's talking about correct behavior, and anything goes does not work because a society that has become strong enough to afford that is fooling itself if it doesn't realize it's just being done on a temporary basis before that kind of thing causes a decay. It's called decadence, and it leads to depravity and degeneracy, and they soon fall. England got to a fit 100-some years ago, and now the Royal Navy can't even afford warships. They no longer rule the waves, and the sun sets a whole lot on the British Empire because it's a commonwealth now, and folk just like being figureheaded by Majesty, the Queen, and all of that, you know. So it is what it is. And even if you look at her direct ancestor, William, Duke of Normandy, also known as William the Bastard, also known as William the Conqueror, aka William I of England. That son of a bitch was interesting. He was famous for what they call Willie's worms. And what were Willie's worms? He'd have his troops fall on a village, seize 10 people, pluck their eyes out, puncture their eardrums, rip their tongues out, amputate both arms, both legs, so they wiggled around in the mud, and the villagers would have to feed them, hence Willie's worms, so they would be reminded that he didn't take any mess. Now, he also, according to his journals that he kept that are still in existence, and archaeologically it's been established, he ordered the extermination of the 150,000 of his subjects because they were inconvenient, so he had them starved to death on purpose. That's pretty ruthless. And that's our ancestor. And that being the case, you can say that the English crown produced what wound up being the English common law, which became, by transplant through the initial English settlement of the American colonies, the law of the United States. And while we whoopee, that's what's at base for this system that we all live in right now. So it's a real wild thing. And the bottom line is that system shows absolutely no respect for weakness. It respects noble enemies, even if the enemies lose. And the Japanese kicked a whole lot of ass, Pearl Harbor, Banzai, Kamikaze, Bushido, karate, and Germany, sure enough, scared the hell out of us with Ardennes, aka Battle of the Bulls, and the Wehrmacht, and all of that, and the SS, and you know, we had many a set to with the English, and we fought with the French. They were allies, and even the Mexicans gave a good go in the Mexican-American War, and Pancho Villa stormed across the border in 1916, 106 years ago. So we respect a lot of people, but what if the colored Negroes, Afro-Americans, Black, African-Americans, Black, done, except be the equivalent of good hunting dogs at best for their white masters, and now they respond to the dog whistles when a certain party blows it. So we haven't got our stuff together. And look, a Native American, when they got mad, they didn't go off and whine and bitch. They nailed scalps to the lodge pole.
Right.
And they named places and trains after Native Americans. And we have Toyotas, Mitsubishis, Lexus, all kinds of things, Infinities parked in our driveways, and Mercedes-Benz vehicles, BMWs, Bavarian, Motorwerken, and you know, Porsches and Audis and Volkswagens that initially were designed in part by Adolf Hitler, the Hitler mobiles we used to call them, and they do well. But what do they have about us? Well, Booker T. Washington High School and Martin Luther King Boulevard. Two peaceful Negroes who did absolutely nothing to shake things up. We're talking about pick up the mop and the pail and be a servant, or get out on your knees, or stand up and sing "We Shall Overcome" while somebody rednecks beating you across your head until some more rednecks felt guilty about it. That engenders absolutely no respect from anybody. And by the way, those demonstrations didn't do a damn thing about advancing the legal rights of black folk. It was the efforts in court by such folk as Thurgood Marshall, locally H.T. Lockett, A.A. Ladding, Russell Sugarman, A.W. Willis, and that group that brought some changes. It wasn't people praying and singing and doing the A.L.L. sharpen let's hold hands and sing, we shall overcome. So we can do absolutely nothing except posture and pose. It was people in the streets. It was courts. And between the two of them, we had legislation that got passed. So be real. Don't try to feel good. And it's not about holidays and it's not about song and dance. And what do we do now? Everybody breaks into song and dance. Go to the polls and they got a bunch of monkeys out there line dancing. Take your booties to the poll and all that nonsense, and sharpen types eating a bucket of fried chicken and holding hands and singing we shall overcome. And right here in Shelby County, where only 19.1% of the registered voters in the city are, well, not only, well, yeah, 19.1% of the registered voters in the city are white, and in the county, only 28+% are white. And look what we get because we've got these surrogate house dogs and the field dogs that represent us, that sell us out all the damn time. And we still have these corrupted voting machines that are used in Shelby County, but nowhere else in the United States of America. And if you read the explanation that the state gives of these machines, you can see how the Justice Department under Bush, Obama, Trump, and this clown that they've got in now, jackass in chief, Jim Crow Joe, you can see how they hack it or hack them. So the last Justice Department just a few months ago, a report just a few months ago said these machines are still hacked, but we still use them because the majority Democrat and Black County Commission won't give a simple majority resolution saying we the below sign hereby resolve to replace these machines. Now, they bought new machines and they're sitting in a warehouse and they aren't used. So we just got the hacked machines that 4 different departments of justice have said are hopelessly corrupted, and have declared and have issued declarations saying we haven't had a fair election here since 2000. That's 22 years ago. And the feds put the money up in 2008, 14 years ago, and we're still half stepping. We just had an election in clear violation of the state law. It says that every 8 years, starting in 2002, every machine has to be inspected by the state commissioner of elections and certified as being functional and accurate. We have never had that happen. There's another law in Tennessee that says before every election, primary, main, early voting for either a sample, a representative sample of each of these machines have to be selected and known vote counts run through them to see if in fact they come back with a correct tally. That has never been done in Shelby County. So we haven't had an election, at least in the last 40 some years, that complies with the state regulation. So what are we supposed to do? You look at this thing with DA where you have Democratic primary candidate Mulroy, who campaigns with a rainbow river going through the middle of his campaign literature, except the stuff he mailed out to predominantly white districts by mail. And you have Linda Harris and some other young girl 5 years out of law school who likes to cut a good figure in her high heel pumps and fashionable attire. And the two of them apparently lost out. If you accept what was going on, we're in an area where only 28+% of the voters, registered voters, are white. Mulroy gets 54% of the vote. And by the way, well, approximately 54% of the vote. And by the way, to show the hack, which is in each individual machine, which can be programmed through any other individual machine in the whole system, he was running almost 54% from the first precinct report and the early voting, which, that just doesn't happen. That doesn't run across the board. So Mulroy has no criminal background in terms of criminal law. The young girl has maybe 2 or 3 bench trials and general sessions, and she doesn't have any. But you have Linda Harris, who was a co-founder of the Afro-American Patrolmen's Association in 1979 when it was rechartered. She was a street cop, and my clients used to talk about how fair she was to resolve disputes. She sent herself through law school. She was a federal judge's law clerk. She was with the U.S. Attorney's Office for 19 years, 15 of them as a prosecutor, the final 4 in the Civil Rights Division. She went into private practice as a defense lawyer, won a lot of criminal cases. Mm-hmm. She filed civil rights stuff dealing with voting rights, protection, free of charge, didn't charge anybody anything. She's a certified mediator and arbitrator for the state of Tennessee, and she's a law professor. And she knows she's got more experience doing the subject than the current incumbent, Witch Wyrick, who is a criminal and ought to be in a federal or a state penitentiary. Now, that being the case, how in the world do black folk take somebody who has a coherent plan to reform juvenile justice, rein in this kangaroo court here, the privatized Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court, who knows all of the ins and outs, who's done plenty of pro bono, that's free work for the black community, who's been a staunch defense attorney, who's been doing this for 40 plus years, and you run her in last place? Do we believe that behind somebody that's 5 years out of law school? Maybe 10, but that's not enough to really know your ins and outs. And then you pick for your choice. This Democratic candidate, somebody that's probably set foot in the criminal courthouse maybe once or twice in his career. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, or else we are one pathetic bunch of ignorant black folk in here to produce that kind of result. Now, I'm an independent.
Yeah, my problem is this. I think voting is not as important as we make it out to be, especially if you can't control who counts the votes and how they're counted. I think therein lies the problem that voting is really a popularity, name recognition contest. Is all about.
But it's not even that. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. But what the Justice Department says, it's not even that. What it is these machines are hacked. They work on Windows 98, modified by as Windows 2000. There's never been a firewall. There's never been a security system. There are no updates available. The hack is inherent in the initial programming. And nobody has had an election for certain positions. If you want to control the outcome and set the percentage you want your candidates to get for certain offices, California put a pamphlet out online showing you how to use a cell phone, like an iPhone or a BlackBerry or whatever, and how to dictate, write out a text to a third party. And when you get within 5 feet of any one of these machines in any precinct, you press send. Now you own that machine. And in 10 minutes, you own every machine in the precinct as to whatever percentage of votes you want for specific candidates. And then within 45 minutes to an hour, you own the whole system. So you call the election. So it's not anybody campaigning. It's not the message. It doesn't make any difference. You see, what happens is you can go in through any one machine and access the vote counts on any other machine in the entire system. That means you can go in the back way and hack one machine and control the outcome of every other machine in the system. So a select number of people, you need 3, 1 to draft up the hack activation. It's already in there. You just have to activate it. You need 1 person to go in for early voting for the primary. And on the early morning of the first day of early voting, to hack the machines then so you control all of them for early voting for the primary. On the main primary day, you need another person to go in with the same text, press send, and then you own the main voting for the primary election. You need 1 person to go in, a third party, though you can actually have either one of the first 2 do it again and hit that same hack send for the first day of early voting for the main election. And then you need 1 other person to go in on election day and run the hack. So you need 3 people to control an election or determine the outcome of an election. It's not a matter of turnout because you're setting a percentage. Let's say, in this case, 53.4%. That's what your candidate's supposed to get. Well, the computer takes all the programming, converts everything, balances it, erases it, puts it in a fictitious candidate number category, and 53.4% is what you get. If you get 100,000 votes, 53.4. If you get 10 votes, you get 5.5, or you can't do that, so it rounds it off to 6. If you get 100 votes, you get 54 out of the 100. If you get 10,000, you get 53.4%. And you can tell it because there will be write-in ballots that people can write in on these machines, and you'll see something absurd like a non-existent candidate, allegedly a write-in, gets, say, 74.75. In other words, 74 3/4 votes, which is nonsensical. You can't get a percentage of a vote. It's got to be a whole one. But this is one of the flaws in the programming, and you can often see that. That's how you can easily determine what offices have been subject to the hack. So it doesn't make any difference what the actual votes were. The computer is going to deliver 53.4% to the chosen candidate for that chosen office. So that's what the Justice Department found. There's a company called Black Box Inc. that is a charitable organization that's dedicated to exposing election fraud. They've been around 20 some years, more than 20. And that's what they find when they come in and analyze it. Now, several times candidates have challenged that here in Shelby County, and each time they won. But the county has appealed that, and some of our little chicken shit young lawyers want to charge people $80, $90, $100,000 as a retainer to go up on appeal to represent the successful plaintiff below. Now, I tell them, I said, why the hell are you charging them a fee? Well, you know, it's all about money. I said, don't you live here? Well, yeah. Well, don't you get concerned that somebody's saying, F you, we're stealing your vote?
Right.
Now, that's also another absurdity. The Biden administration, Associated Press, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, you know, they'll ban you for so-called information, and they warn you up front, you can't say anything about this when it comes to the upcoming election. And they've got some jackass woman who's 8 months pregnant right now. Good for her, but she's from immigrants from an area that was into fascism and totalitarianism. So they bring that attitude over and they train her, and she's talking about, oh my God, with Elon Musk coming over, I shudder to think of all of the mischief that's going to be caused by free speech. So what in the hell is wrong with you? You hold an American appointed position in the U.S. government, and you're talking about free speech is something that's horrible? What the hell's wrong with you? See, that's that neo-Nazi stuff, fascism.
Yeah, I want to talk about, because you talk about the Shelby
And
County,
thank
Tennessee.
God Elon Musk took over Twitter. Yeah,
Yeah,
but you know, it's bad. And see, all these people need to be
I mean,
exposed.
this way I
And
want
then
to
I'm
hold
looking
up.
at
I want to
Van
run
Turner.
back to the Shelby County.
I want to put
Okay.
something. Yeah, Shelby County, Van Turner. He's
Mm-hmm.
on the county commission.
Mm-hmm.
I think he needs to be in jail for what he did with Nathan Bedford Forrest and Jeff Davis, chartering this so-called charitable corporation that got each one of the parks for $2,500, no bid, with the contrivance of Tammy Sawyer, who needs to be in jail for fraud. And then now that they've acquired for $5,000 this property in Midtown Memphis in the hospital complex on Union Avenue, and the
Right.
other park down there next to the Metal Museum on the bluff, they've been offered upwards of $20-some million for the two properties that they acquired for $2,500 apiece. And what about the taxpayers' money? And why is somebody's half brother storing Nathan Bedford Forrest and Jeff Davis's statue at $5,000 a month times 12 times 5? That's 60 months worth of that at $5,000 a month, and the people that voted for this variance are splitting the money. That's nothing but corruption, and some people need to be in that side of jail. And then Van Turner, who is president of the local NAACP chapter, which is next to useless now, intervenes up here in this lawsuit in Mason, Tennessee, and with the contrivance of the state comptroller, who's been invading Wanda Halbert's office, along with Harris, the mayor of the county, and taking public funds every night out of that taxpayers, the set of taxpayers' deposits, that is something under the purvey of the county clerk by constitutional mandate, in commingling funds with one that the state comptroller is in charge of, that's being used to influence what happens up in Mason. And see what's going on in Mason. Well, there is a gerrymandered 8th district that goes from East Memphis all the way up to Jackson, Tennessee. Now, 3 congressional districts join in Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson, Tennessee is overwhelmingly black, and that ought to be 1 district, but they split it into 3, and the Jackson component forms a distinct minority in each of the 3 separate gerrymandered congressional districts. So if they bring in Mason, Tennessee as a municipality, wherein Ford is going to have to bring in 27,500 new employees, there are only 1,600 people in Mason that are old enough to work. So when you bring in 27,000 people from outside, that's going to mean they'll probably move their families there. And that means you're going to need Burger Kings, Mickey D's, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Kroger, the Macy's, pet veterinarian stations, emergency centers, theaters, and all this other stuff. You're talking about a town of 100,000 people, which will have to be built in 5 years. So the usual suspects that rip off the taxpayers here in Shelby County didn't want it here, the Ford factory here in Memphis / Shelby County, because the real estate costs are too high. But they can control real estate at a rural rate up in Mason County, and the factory will be 12 miles from Mason. The citizens don't mind. In fact, they want the Ford plant there. But then you look at the mayor of Tipton County, he bought 550 acres between Mason and the factory's location, where downtown New Mason will be moving to, and he'll make a fortune. The governor of the state has a controlling interest in the corporate entity that is going to be selling the components for the batteries at the electric car factory for Ford Motor Company. You see the interest? The comptroller is trying to wheedle in and get a good financial position, and our sharks down here stand to make several $billion, which will be the largest net they have ever come up with when they build a town for 100,000 people, which is essentially the size of metropolitan Jackson, Tennessee, in just 5 years. There's also federal funding that's going to UT Knoxville to train new high school students who will be college students over the next 4.5 years. So they will come out with STEM degrees that will be appropriate to the new electric car technology. Now, they're recruiting all over the state, but they have not touched Memphis and Shelby County, Tennessee. So there are a whole lot of black students that could go into that everybody's ignoring, including the jackasses we have that are supposed to be our black representatives on the county commission and the city council. Okay, you've got Cadillac, who is trying to produce upscale electric cars, also in West Tennessee, and Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee showed no interest in that, but the usual suspects here are trying to build the stuff up there. And what's going to happen is this: Ford is trying to have low-level, inexpensive electric cars, and they want to get a jump on the rest of the world, and they have hooked up with the Chinese to use Chinese battery technology, which the governor has an interest in the American company that is licensed to use it. So they want to sell these cars in China, Korea, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia. They want to sell it in India and in Europe. And Cadillac wants an upscale luxury market. So are they talking about bringing these cars an hour and a half down I-40 to Memphis and putting them on barges that are unloaded, that have been brought here from Europe, and loading them up, taking them to New Orleans, putting them on the ocean-going barge transports and taking them back to Europe, where they can be unloaded in Europe or go through the Mediterranean and the Suez Canal and get into India and the Far East? No, they're talking about letting these things get put on trains, shipped to the East Coast, and put on in containers, which will be put on container ships, which will suffer pilferage, damage, bribes to the mob, high cost, and things taken over that way. So we're losing out because these people are short-sighted and don't have a damn clue. We just got through listening to a big bullshit lecture on the expense of energy. Why the hell are we suffering the likelihood of dumping ashes from coal plants in Memphis as landfill, which is extremely hazardous? Why are we doing that, worrying about it, when we could be seeking hydroelectric turbines down here in the Mississippi and getting essentially free, unlimited hydroelectric green power that we could sell to New Orleans, we could sell to St. Louis, Kansas City, Chicago, Detroit, and we're missing all of that because these short-sighted idiots get crumbs under the damn table, and we get them in office because they look like us, but they don't represent us, and they're getting chicken change, and we're getting shafted. See, what about that? With that energy source here, we could have unlimited industry. There's no smog inversion layer. And centered on Memphis, we could have mile after mile of heavy industry with jobs, not for $15 an hour minimum wage, but where you'd be talking about 72.16 or 112.14 per hour, because there is a specialized labor requirement that people here could be trained easily to manifest. But we don't do that. We could be the Chicago for the 21st century, not as that piss poor place is run now, but as it ought to be and as it was at the beginning of the 20th century.
Well, let me bring up a point, Judge, about that. Name me the most powerful black politician in the state of Tennessee, in your opinion. Who's the most powerful black politician in the state of Tennessee?
Not one. Every one of them is a lap dog or a yard dog or a hunting dog.
And this the problem. The last really most powerful political figure we ever had as a black person, it's not Harrington, was Robert Church Jr. And the Crump machine benefited from Robert Church partnership with him. And once they got control, they ran Robert Church and his family out of Tennessee, out of Memphis.
Let me give you another update. H.T. Lockett, Judge H.T. Lockett. He was the godfather. Every black judge we had for years, every black politician we had for years, he had to give the okay to. They kept asking him, did he want to be a judge? He said, hell no, until finally he said, I'm tired of practicing law. He was, he was up there with Buford Ellington back in the 60s, the governor. And he called the shots. He, by the way, started practicing law in 1951. And he filed all of the actions free of charge, didn't get a fee for it, to desegregate Memphis State University, where so many black folk go to and play basketball and get their degrees. He desegregated all of the high schools, and how many of us go to White Station High and, Whitehaven High and, Hamilton and Booker T. Washington. He filed, Booker T. Washington was the one that was black folk. But other than that, he filed all of the stuff that desegregated the parks, the swimming pools, the museums, and by the way, desegregated that piss poor juvenile court for Memphis and Shelby County. When I first started practicing law, it had only been integrated about 1 year and 2 months. And before that, black lawyers couldn't even walk up in there without permission. You had to wait out in the hallway with your client. So he's responsible for that. So do we name a street after H.T. Lockett? No, we name it after a bunch of handkerchief heads that kissed ass and did the B routine. Unbelted, crop breeches, bent, drop boxes, bent over, spread butt cheeks, got boy banged or unbroad, skirt hike, bloomers drop, butt on the bench, D's buck, beaver bust. See, I'm sorry, they can do that, but
but also these are
casting couch for political office.
But to show the lack of this stature and gravitas that these people had, they had these so-called named streets named after them. These are honorary street names. A lot of them don't get the official name change. I mean, I.B. Wells got the official name change, but they ran out of Memphis 130 years ago when she was 29 years old. They said, you ever show your face down here, we'll blow it off. That's what they did. I.B. Wells, a black woman from Holly Springs.
Robert Church Park.
Yeah, he had but it was a auditorium there that Crump knocked down.
Yeah.
They brought Theodore Roosevelt and Booker T. Washington to speak there. Thousands of people attend. But here's the thing I want to make, though. I wrote you in as criminal court clerk when I voted early. And I looked on the news, that the person who won criminal court clerk, there was no percentage for write-in votes on the news.
I know.
I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier in the conversation. They don't count everything. So my thing is this. This is what I'm trying to get a point to. Why are we telling black folks to waste their time to cast votes and their votes are not counted? If you got over 9, I saw Stephanie Gatewood. She was running for juvenile court clerk at Five Guys, and she was on the school board when they merged. And she told me the reason why they merged, because they were like $400 million almost in debt. They thought merging with the Shelby County schools would save the Memphis City schools, but we see what's going on with that now.
We still have to pay it in Memphis.
Yeah, but it's like she says, like 900,000 registered Shelby County voters in Shelby County, Tennessee, right? But maybe 100,000 showed up. But I think the people are smart at what's going on. It's so corrupt. Why waste my gas and my time?
Well, that's what they're trying to do. And did you hear?
Why are these black ministers telling black folks to vote, to waste their time?
They're pulpit pimps. They're pulpit pimps because a lot of them are supporting the opposition. So here's what 3, 5, and 13 are saying.
Okay.
Black people just aren't enthused by so-and-so, and black people don't vote, blah, 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 blah. And the white Republicans have issues that appeal more to black voters, and it's bullshit. The whole idea is part of political science where you propagandize to get your opposition to believe that. They get demoralized. They don't come out to vote. Right. They don't exercise the franchise, and after 22 years of sticking it to them, what winds up happening is they don't give a damn anymore. They become lethargic and say, what the hell's worth my time? And then see, it's not just black people, it's white people too.
Right.
They changed my precinct, and then I found out the precinct had been changed back. So I show up, and when I get there are two black folk out in the parking lot in a mostly white area, and they're passing out their little literature. They didn't know who the hell was on the damn things, but they were passing it out. When I went in, there was a black woman and her black husband. There was a white woman and her white husband, and they were polling officials, and they had 3 stations to vote. There was a white couple. They looked like they were in their 60s, and they were complaining because they'd showed up earlier in the day, and now 3.5 hours after they first showed up, they had been to the precinct they were directed to. They were told that was the wrong one, directed to a third precinct, told it was the wrong one. And then this came back, and finally somebody called up and said, well, here's what you can do. If you show up at this precinct, you can issue a conditional ballot. And I didn't see anything about the conditional ballots. And I have a friend here. She deals with zoning and code consultation. Here's what happened. She had to go to 3 different precincts in order to vote because they kept telling her, well, you know, you're supposed to be at this one. Wait a minute. Supposed to be at that one. Wait a minute. Supposed to be at this one. So the couple in front of me, the white couple, was complaining that they'd spent 3.5 hours. So the sister was talking about it took her 2 hours. So, I mean, this isn't in line. Remember, I went in there, and when this couple left, I was the only one up in there. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Wow. I went and voted, and I finished voting before the next one voter showed up. I mean, so in 25, 35 minutes, that's one couple, me, and one other person. 4 voters come in. And then remember, for the first few days of this election, early voting, they only had one place open, downtown at the Election Commission, where they had limited machines and no parking. Right. And then they wanted to come up with the lame excuse, well, there was a religious holiday, so the preachers didn't want the precincts in their church. Well, what the hell's that got to do with it? How about the Agri Center, where they always have early voting? How about all these schools that were on Easter break, where they could have had early voting? How about the public buildings, where they could have had early voting? So what the hell are they talking about? And instead of us doing what we do, we ought to be down there all up in the face of our colored representatives on the county commission. And let's talk about the Board of Education. 78% of the students in the County Board of Education are here in Memphis, and they're black. But we only have 2 representatives, and there are 8 people basically that are representing other areas on the Board of Education. Well, 6 of these elected officials represent 22% of the students, and 2 of them represent 78% of the students. And the city of Memphis is still stuck footing the bill for all of these municipalities: Germantown, Collierville, Cordova, Bartlett, Arlington, Millington, you name it. Now, let's look at something else. We still have a game being run by this witch in the DA's office, Amy Werewitch, and that's got to do with these rape kits. We've got 28,000 relevant, untested rape kits. Ronnie Coleman will be getting close to $1 million in fees for vetting them. This is as per the Memphis City Council. They have another 5-year extension going to a New York firm that is to get $7.2 million the last I checked, which may have been increased. I don't know. to do tests for these rape kits. Now, why is this ridiculous? Well, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation says we don't get it. We'll come in and test every one of them free of charge within 30 days. What the hell are you doing? It's a ripoff. And then the other thing is, why the hell is the city of Memphis paying to get the kits tested for Millington, Arlington, Bartlett, Cordova, Collierville, Germantown? So why do we pick up the tab for them? Another thing, why are so many black kids who now live in Germantown getting taken downtown to this piss poor kangaroo bullshit known as the Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court, when the white ones get taken to Germantown, Collierville, Cordova city courts, and their matters are quickly disposed of for court costs? They get tapped on the back of the hand, lectured sternly, and the black kids have to put up with this miserable for-profit corporate run entity known as Memphis and Shelby County, Tennessee, where most of the people that hold office down there or high positions are stockholders, like Harold Horn or the elected judge down there who functions as a taxpayer's CEO for a private corporate entity that is run for profit. And their idea is if you screw up families, that generates future business, which is good for profitability.
Yes.
So why is that kind of sick stuff going on? Why doesn't the DA do something? Oh, she's part of it. Okay, we have a district attorney that Harvard, Yale, Princeton's law reviews, Stanford's law reviews have found to be the most corrupt in the United States of America. This woman that is the DA has more findings for personal prosecutorial misconduct than any other district attorney's office over that time period has collectively. And that includes Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Miami, Detroit. In that order. By the way, Memphis fits in as number 5 in terms of absolute criminal cases handled. L.A., New York, Chicago, Dallas, Memphis, Houston, Miami, Detroit. The interesting thing is we have 6 divisions of misdemeanor criminal courts, that's general sessions, and we have 10 felony criminal court divisions, that's a total of 16, but Houston, that's behind us, has 42. So we actually handle more, and we get shafted on this. Why is it that our DA, this corrupt heifer, keeps getting returned over and over again? And why is it that the Justice Department finds that right now, her office gives the stiffest recommendations for simple possession of marijuana given out in the entirety of the United States of America? Why is it that the Justice Department has found that her office contributes 95% of the juveniles sent from Shelby County to be confined and tried as adults in the Tennessee system? And why is it that 54% of those who were tried and sentenced and in the adult system in Tennessee are from Shelby County, which means that 52% of the juveniles in the state of Tennessee confined as adults are from black kids from Shelby County? See, why do we allow that kind of crap? Why do we have a situation where over and over again the Sex Crimes Bureau of the Sheriff's Department and the Memphis Police Department have found downright pedophile corruption and exploitation of children by these volunteer counselors down at juvenile court? They get to check the pretty boys out Friday afternoon, take them to these places down in Hot Springs, to the bathhouses, and bring them back Monday afternoon, and they pay for it, and they had the proof. They were trying to go in front of a grand jury and got told to back off and the records destroyed. And I won't broadcast it on the air, but you know who I'm talking about, who used to be chief of the Sex Crimes Bureaus for the police in the sheriff's department. You know them personally, and I'll tell you who they are next time we talk over the phone so
Yes,
you
sir.
can talk about it.
Mm.
Now, you've got a case involving pedophile, molestation, and rape of children 9 through 13 years old that was so bad it made the Tennessee District Attorney's weekly newspaper. But this witch you have down there, let this clown, this was his third time around.
Mm-hmm.
This was the third city this Southern Baptist preacher had been sent to behind molesting boys, and he got sent to a fourth city. And the church in question settled with the families by saying, we offer to pay for the boys' college educations. But they had videotapes, witness statements, and everything else for 10, 15 boys who had been raped by this pedophile pervert. But yet our DA let him plead out to 10 consecutive misdemeanor charges, and he's not on a sex registry. Given 10 years probation, unsupervised, but what the hell? But that was 1129, 1129, 1129, 1129 running wild. So what the hell? Does he care? You see, that's the kind of perversion we've got in this county.
But you broke down the way the voting machine stuff works. I don't think can we go back to paper ballots? Would it be complex? We too complex?
Why not? Paper ballots? These new machines are electronic, but they have an old time paper roll equivalent of a cash register receipt.
Okay.
So when the voter votes, one is torn off and handed to him to record his vote. The main roll is kept. So at any point in time, a poll watcher can come through there and pull the tape and get a look at what's going on in the vote. The tape still stays with the machines, but he can look. So the charlatans down here saying, no, we can't have that. That would allow people to snoop and determine who voted for who. Well, no, it doesn't. But it would be an absolute record of who voted at what machine and what the total was, rather than saying we can't tell you for these individual machines. But that's a lie, because you can. In fact, you can access all of the other machines through any other single machine in the system, which means that while we whoop-de-doo, you can hack every other machine from one machine, which is exactly what we do. Somebody just put something up in the chat room about dangling chads. By the way, the machines used were a version of the ones we use right here, except instead of an electronic recordation of the vote, they had a card. You put the card in a holder, and you took a punch, and you punched out who you wanted to vote for. Now, the problem was that somebody from Shelby County was hired to go down there as a consultant, and he passed the machines that hadn't been cleaned for 5 elections, so the slots where the chads go were filled. But I talked to the black woman who was the federal judge that had the case. She said there was no problem. They just didn't pop off, but you could easily see who voted for who. The problem is this person from Shelby County who okayed these machines as being okay, got paid for it, black. What happened was ballot cards that went to predominantly black and Democratic precincts were printed off registers, so the machines couldn't register the stuff. She said she appointed a team of statisticians. The Gore campaign did, and the Bush campaign did. And what happened was they announced in court that all 3 teams were of the opinion that the random selections they had pulled indicated that Gore was getting between 61 and 63% of the popular vote in Florida, which meant he was supposed to get the electoral college vote. So at that point, Kathleen Harris, who was the elected commissioner of elections for Florida, who also was volunteer co-chair of the Bush campaign, she didn't retire from her state position due to a conflict. The judge said, The woman took her shoes off, ran out of her courtroom barefooted, and immediately declared the election over. And on a 5-4 unprecedented decision by the Supreme Court, they said it was okay. And one of the most disgusting things that came from that 5-4 majority was the following: it is not unconstitutional to deprive a citizen of the effect of his vote so long as it does not impact the outcome of the election. Now, actually, what happened is after the election was over, long over, UPI, Associated Press, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, etc., they all sent down accountants, and the teams got together and they got through the Freedom of Information Act. They got to count every single ballot in the state of Florida. Guess what? Gore got 62% of the total popular vote, and he's supposed to have gotten the Electoral College votes, and he wouldn't have had this idiot George W. Bush as president of the United States with what all he did to damage everything, followed by his cousin, Barack Obama. Oh, talking about stuff. Oh, here's the good one. Wow, we whoopee. Most people don't know this. Barack Obama's maternal grandfather, was first cousins with George Herbert Walker Bush, president of the United States, and second cousin to George Walker Bush. And Obama was fourth cousin to President George Herbert Walker Bush and third cousin to George Walker Bush. And also he was third cousins to guess who? Vice President Dick Cheney and billionaire Warren Buffett through his mama. So, I mean, can you see that? First cousin to granddaddy.
Right.
Your granddaddy is first cousins to a president. He's second cousin to another president and third cousin to a vice president of the United States. And you cousin to all of these, you know, it's incestuous.
It's all in the family, man. Keep it in the family.
All in the family.
It's like the Rothschild. They were marrying each other off.
Well, and speaking of interesting things about involuntary servitude, this is interesting. Samuel
you know what Gore messed up though? All he had to do was win either Arkansas or Tennessee, and he would have got it.
Oh yeah, but remember, this is 2000. One of the things that's in there is the Justice Department said our voting machines in Memphis and Shelby County, Tennessee, were hacked.
So you say he wanted? I mean, his father was a popular political figure from Tennessee.
Yeah. So
his father Al Gore Sr. was very
to
popular
take
in
that
Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens is the Democrats learned from the Republican hack in the 2000 election. So they hacked the last one. But of course, you can't say that because they got a jackass female who is in there talking about if you dare to question or imply that something was wrong, you should be prosecuted for Homeland Security. Oop, whoops. We're trying to figure out if we...
Would you say they use like paper ballots for that? The mail-in ballots, whatever? They help
with
that.
The mail-in ballots, yeah, but here's what gets me. They are trying to make it easier to commit voting fraud by all of this. Well, black folk don't need to present ID to register to vote. Well, how are you going to get to the polls if you don't drive? And how many black folk down in the hood, in the middle class areas, have driver's licenses?
Right.
How often do you have to change the registration sticker on the back of your license tag every year? Wow, we whoopee. We're too stupid to do that. We can't. And then look here in this city, this county, this state, and most of the southern states, where do you change your voting registration? At the Department of Motor Vehicles. You can do register at the same time you get your driver's license, or you deal with your voting registration problems, not voting registration, your vehicle registration problems. You can change your voting registration or register initially where you get your driver's license. So we're too stupid to go down and get a damn driver's license? I don't buy it. Every thug and his mama got a driver's license damn near to drive a vehicle on these streets. They may not have insurance, but they get those licenses. So same place you get the license, you can register to vote. So we need to make it easier. I mean, there's some point where you don't have the gumption or the initiative to go do what you need to do to vote. You don't need to vote because you're going to be too damn trifling and you respond to the dog whistle. Here, boy. Come on, dog. Come on. The good boy. Tricks,
Judge,
go fetch. Go, you know.
But Judge, you running for mayor in 2023. Now, if it's a close race, will you contest the results if it's not in your favor?
I'm not running. If I'm not going to get in this race if we don't get rid of these damn corrupted voting machines.
Okay.
The Justice Department threatened to sue the county commissioners if they didn't spend the money that's been on account since 2008. They did, but the machines are in a warehouse and they refuse to use them. Also, this is another thing. Again, I repeat, Tennessee law requires that by 2002, every single election machine in the state had to be certified by the State Election Commission as functional. No less than every 8 years thereafter, every machine has to be certified as functional. That has never happened in Shelby County. There's another Tennessee law. I'll give you the citations if you want to look them up. Hold on. What that says is every election, primary, main election, early voting, a representative sample of the machines has to be chosen at random. Okay. And they have to be tested to see if they deliver an actual vote count, and they have to be examined and tested to see if they are corrupted or they are free of the corruption. And that has never been done in Shelby County, ever. Now, the citation, 2016 Tennessee Codes, Title II, Elections, Chapter 9, Voting Machines, Section 2-9-110. The other one that applies, that deals with something I didn't even bring up, but the primary one is Tennessee Codes Annotated, Section 2-17-104. And then you go on to contested elections. And then you get 2-9-117, voting machines, approval of voting machines. All these laws are there that Shelby County has never complied with. Because why? If they did, they'd get caught.
So who are, I mean, you said Lockhart was a kingmaker, I guess, but who are the kingmakers in Shelby County then? Who are the organization or the individuals that are the true kingmakers?
They're into voting. They are into real estate acquisition, management, development, construction, and construction material supply.
Okay.
Anybody black on that list?
No.
They're the same people that got $85 million spent on this pyramid that was supposed to be built for the same amount of money on the South Bluff where the Rivermark is. It was supposed to be the full size of the kiosk pyramid instead of half size. Who owned that property and who got the contracts? It's the same group that built Mud Island Amusement Park, the same group that built Mud Island Housing, the same group that had Mid-American Mall that closed down all those businesses for 25 years for BS. Right. And it's just revitalized. It's the same group that got the money for Peabody Place development, including this defunct movie theater that went bust because they didn't play anything any of the locals wanted to look at. And now they have a request. The city council keeps trying to sneak around to look at about building a new movie theater downtown at taxpayers' expense. It's the same group that got the $35 million of taxpayers' money spent for Beale Street Landing at the end of Beale Street at Riverside. that was supposed to be a gift center, a gift store, a bar, and a grill complex, but the guy bailed, and he was only supposed to pay 4 to 6% of his net profits to the city or county. And we didn't sue him. And by the way, that's the usual deal. The taxpayers pay for the building of the damn thing. And what happens? Gets built. And the people that got the bill is supposed to give the city $1 cash up front every year and 4 to 6% of the net, but they always zero it out. So there is none. How about this hotel down from Elvis Presley in Blackhaven, used to be Whitehaven? A supposed 5-star hotel. Well, as usual, they didn't do an environmental study, and there was a big problem. On opening day, the infestation of brown recluse spiders that had been released during construction invaded the place. A lot of people got bitten, and at least 3 people died, and their families got a hell of a lot of money out of the settlements. But nobody talked about that. So why the hell are we paying for a private hotel that is way beyond the means of most of the people who might want to go view the Elvis Presley mansion? They stay at Motel 6 and Holiday Inn. They don't stay there, but some people got paid big money to build it. So what's wrong with us? Music City? Oh, the king, Elvis. Good for him. He's been dead for a while. He once famously said the only thing a Negro, and I'm being polite about it, can do for me is shine my shoes and buy my records. And I remember when I was in school in L.A., we got outraged about that.
But also, I do people who said they Elvis brought cars for some black people.
Pays attention, but then we have stacks. Oh yeah, well he did. I know.
I mean, it's black folks that actually are fans of Elvis. Though. I mean, in Memphis, I know black people that are fans of Elvis.
Yeah, I know
Elvis
they are, but very few.
Yeah,
very few. Yeah, I know. But the bottom line is,
let me say
okay,
this then.
You give everything.
What you said about the real kingmakers and power players, herein lies the problem. Our so-called leaders are misleading us about this voting BS because they're not counting our votes. They don't want the majority to have a voice in this city, in this county. They don't want the inmates to run the asylum. Therein lies the problem. We don't have honest leadership among our own people. We don't have
certainly don't.
Transparency among our own people. And they use the religion to control the people down here.
Well, let's take Harold
folks ain't
Collins.
Honest, man. None of these folks honest about what's going on.
Well, let's take Harold Collins.
Okay.
He and some preachers at Mississippi Boulevard wound up getting arrested for embezzling several $1 million from Mississippi Boulevard Baptist Church. He got indicted. Okay. He was Amy Wyrick's driver and recipient of a huge grant that he gets about $75K a year from to operate a black youth center that he does absolutely nothing with. And Amy Wyrick refused to prosecute her driver, so nothing is done about it, and that indictment is still open, but an indicted person was on the city council, and while Whoopi still works for the DA's office. Now, what happened with that? Civilly, they dismissed the pending civil litigation because the money got whisked away to Africa and nobody could produce civilly where the money was to sustain their civil burden in an action for damages. But that doesn't cut off a criminal action, but Amy Wyrick is set on that. So let's talk about what Harold Collins has done. He jumped Handel Durham, who, by the way, is running for judge this time, and I commend him as a fine, fair individual who, when he practiced in front of me, was a very good attorney.
He is sharp,
very well read.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happened? Harold Collins decided to jump him because it turned out Handel Durham at the time was the only black contractor with the city of Memphis, and he was getting 10% on the dollar for collecting past due fines and costs that were due to city court. So, of course, Handel Durham is no pushover. He fought back. And what happened is it turned out there were 20 people or entities that were getting a percentage for collecting for city court, except he got 10% and all the rest that were white got 20%. So, Harold Collins is unrepentant. He thought he did the right thing because his masters whistled him up. And he did what he did. Now, you see, that kind of thing is typical. So we've got Harris, who he and his wife have been law professors for a decade and a half at Memphis
And
State.
this is
That
Lee
means
Harris,
you work
the
about
mayor of Shelby
15.
County.
Lee
Harris.
Harris, that means you work about 20 hours a week max, and the university encourages its professors to take pro bono case. He's a licensed attorney, and has he taken any pro bono cases to advance the situations of the black residents of Shelby County? Answer, no. You see, what is his complicity with the comptroller who's trying to jack around Mason in invading Wanda Halbert's bank accounts for the clerk's office every night? She didn't know where the money was going, then discovered that they were taking it, and there are federal funds that go to the clerk's office, but they're violating federal and state law by commingling those funds in another account, which seems to have some suspicious activity going on with it. And is that money being used to leverage something personal for the comptroller and for Mayor Lee Harris in terms of getting a piece of the action up here in Mason? See, we need to look at that. That's what the DA is supposed to do. But of course, the DA is a crook. And I say that with personal knowledge. In the mid 90s, she was a new prosecutor, and she came into my courtroom where she was not assigned and asked me to take a transfer because her judge, Daly, a young judge, who I always characterized as one of the worst racists on the bench, he was also the youngest judge in criminal court. She said he was in trial. So I said I'd accept the transfer. The clerk's jacket is brought in. It's a male and female. They're white. She announces it's a minor drug case. She's going to drop the charges against the female defendant, and the male defendant's going to be allowed to plead guilty to 1 year upfront, unsupervised probation, judicial diversion, with his record to be expunged at the end of the year. No fine. All right. They didn't talk about drugs. I noted that. And I said, well, the court always requires in here that we have a hearing. So she wanted the case set 34 days from that date, which would have taken it outside the 30-day limit that I had to do something about it.
Right.
So I set it at 26 days. So we get the pre-sentence report, and conspicuously absent is anything about the drugs. Now, I'd been doing that for decades as public defender, prosecutor, defense lawyer, and I knew there was always a statement of what the case was about, but there was none. So I got to this part, and I'm talking to this young white kid, and I said, well, the court is curious. How do you manage to purchase a brand new twin turbo 911 Porsche? How did you get the credit? He said, well, Your Honor, I didn't get the credit. I paid cash. I said, okay. I said, you can step down. Your Honor, is that going to be on? No, not quite. Mr. Duckett, would you be so kind as to convey the court's compliments to Captain so-and-so over Metro Narco and request that he give us benefit of his presence tomorrow, let's say at about 10:30, and this matter is reset till then. So here's what this witch was giving 1 year unsupervised probation on. Metro Narco had been doing intensive investigation on this case, had wire on people, got recorded conversations. They seized $880,000 in cash, when they made the bust after the wire revealed that the deal was going down. They seized 4 kilos of essentially pure cocaine, 4 kilos of essentially pure heroin, 3,000 some hits of crystal meth, about 2,000 hits of quaaludes, 1,500 of LSD, and a whole lot of opiate material. And this was supposed to be 1 year unsupervised probation, no fine, record to be expunged at the end of a year, when the minimum sentence under the state law would have been 45 years. Under the federal system, it would have been life in the penitentiary, and this is what she's letting go. And it wasn't even a chance bust. Metro Narco had worked on it for 3.5 years. So I set aside the plea. I refused to allow her to transfer it back to her judge's court, and they tried to let him plead out the 3 years. The court refused it. 6 years, the court refused it. 8 years, the court refused it, because that meant that it would remain by contract Shelby County has with the Department of Corrections to be out here at the penal farm, where somebody could have suspended the remainder of sentence. So I let him plead out as a range 2 standard offender to the Department of Corrections. So that meant he would have had done at least 8 years. And Metro Narco had indicated that they had more pending investigations. So I said, well, we'll let it take its course. But I'll be damned if I'll let you get away with this for East Memphis, when this is not how you treat South or North Memphis. You'd be coming in here yelling about 25 years. We're not letting anybody cop out to 1 year unsupervised probation, no fine, and judicial diversion. To hell with you. Now, see, that's the kind of injustice that's done in this county. And by the way, there is a certain maitre d' of a certain restaurant that did a lot of business around here, whose son, who was known to Metro Narco to be a very big drug kingpin in Memphis and Shelby County, that this woman's daughter dated, that she kept trying to protest for 12 years, was only 12 years old.
Wow. Now, Judge, let me ask you this. I was thinking, is it possible to make a citizen's arrest of Amy Warwick? Could you make a citizen's arrest?
Yeah, they should. And the Supreme Court of the state, in quite a few cases, has said they don't understand why the woman still has a law license. Now, remember when Danny Owens had that adult entertainment complex over there on Airways at Winchester?
Yes, sir.
Well, the feds, it was a strip joint, adult entertainment, adult movie theater over there at the corner of Winchester and Airways, out by the airport. Well, Danny Owens, who owned it, was prosecuted by the feds because he wouldn't snitch on somebody they were interested in. And then Danny Owens deeded the property over to his 19-year-old son. So Wyrick and her husband, this is the finding of the Tennessee Supreme Court in a written opinion. They noted that she and her husband had an interest in the property and were trying to purchase it. And they said they don't understand how she was not found liable for perjury, because she was specifically asked about it and denied it, which they said was perjury. And she and her husband wanted this property, so they charged the 19-year-old with a felony to get him out of the way, but he sold the property or deeded the property over to a third person, and Wyrick went after this person and had him indicted so she and her husband could acquire the property. The Supreme Court of this state said it was so fouled up that the only remedy they could have was not just set the conviction aside, but dismiss the whole indictment, and said it was one of the worst examples of prosecutorial misconduct they had ever encountered. And that's in writing. And yet this woman is still district attorney for Memphis and Shelby County, Tennessee. Now, Nora Jackson. Well, there was a rape kit done of Nora Jackson's mother, who had had sex within an hour or two of her murder. Amy Wyrick refused to let it be tested. However, there were some black female investigators on staff who had complained that there was a certain white investigator who regularly called them, quote, nigger bitches to their, unquote, to their faces. They complained to EEOC. EEOC found cause, issued them a right to sue letter. Wyrick told them they either dropped everything or they walked. They refused to drop, they walked. But what they had done in the meanwhile is they had found the rape kit, got it tested, and it developed that the DNA from the rape kit was known because it belonged to a white United Methodist preacher up in Jackson, Tennessee, whose DNA was all over the murder scene. Mm-hmm. So they set the conviction aside on Nora Jackson. Now, they've done that on 11 separate occasions where they have determined that the victim was harmed by prosecutorial misconduct. But interestingly enough, every one of them was white. So if you have 11 whites that were victimized by the personal prosecutorial misconduct of Amy Wyrick, think about the fact that only 11 to 12% of the people prosecuted in this county are white. And how many black folk got done in that nobody gave a damn about.
I mean, I just think when you tell me all this,
every damn pulpit primp that sits there and is already lined up to support Amy Wyrick again for DA ought to be thrown off the pulpit and rolled out of town on a rail, tarred and feathered, or defrocked.
I really don't think people vote for.
And the other thing, yeah, but the other
I don't
thing
think they voted for her like that. I just think that the system is so out of control.
I don't think they did either.
I don't think the people vote for these people like that. Yeah, I mean, they're not counting the votes.
When I ran against her, listen to this. When I ran against her in 2014, there were only two candidates, Amy Wyrick and Judge Joe Brown, right?
Yes, sir. I remember that.
That's two candidate numbers in the machine, but there were 5 and 84,000 votes from North Memphis, South Memphis to foot home areas went to 3 non-existent candidates. And we had something like 72.25 write-in votes. Now figure that. You can't have a quarter of a write-in vote. So Black Box got to look at it when we challenged it, and they said, got him. But what happened? They changed the law. I had 9 black lawyers who were co-plaintiffs with me, and I wound up doing all the damn work, and I asked them to serve the stuff, and they left it to me, and they had changed the law recently. So if you serve the election commission, it has to be done through the sheriff. You can't do it personally. So on that technicality, after he'd gone forward, the case was dismissed. I just said, well, what the hell, let it go. They got actual notice, but that's besides the point. We did get the discovery, and hell, I was retired anyway. I was over 65. Screw this crap, you know.
So I mean, we living in a banana republic, and people don't know it. That's the problem. You talking about Venezuela and all this other crap. You live in an organized chaos. It's a banana republic without the name, without the term.
By the way, Banana Republic. What do they have in Banana Republic? They have mosquito problems, yellow fever and crap. When's the last time anybody has sprayed your area for mosquitoes in Memphis, Shelby County?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
A long time, because we have a nascent yellow fever problem that has been kept down for the last 100 or so years because of insect eradication. They haven't done it in a while, just like the infrastructure for Memphis Light, Gas, and Water has been allowed to go to hell. When they used to have snow on the ground from late December all the way through to March, when I first got here 50 years ago. Now it just has a dusting of snow, and maybe 1 or 2 days out of the year you get snow. But this year, all of the power went down, which it didn't before. And some people, I went 7 days with no electricity, and some people went 11 days without any.
That's crazy. I mean, you live in a high value area, suppose. I mean, you live in a
Yeah,
place where you're
and
supposed to get services.
well, that's one of the places I've got. I got one out here in Memphis with through my niece. She rented me some property. Last year we had this power. I mean, the water mains dropped in pressure, and we had all of the pollutants seep into the system, and everybody was directed not to use tap water for any purpose until they corrected the problem. What the hell's happened? The infrastructure's gone to hell. I had 2 motor vehicles that were down from street debris because the streets are in such poor repair. You see all these damn potholes that haven't been filled since whenever, since Doc's been in office.
But you know what the thing about
where's this money going?
Yeah,
We
but the
had
water, yeah,
we
but
had $300 million of taxpayers' money spent a few years ago, and it didn't go to taxpayers or infrastructure renovation or restoration. It went to the people that are into real estate acquisition, management, development, construction material supply, that pay $1 to the bribed city councilman or county commissioners, and supposedly 4 to 6% of their net profit, which they always zero out, and they get to operate and run the place after getting paid to build it and supply the building materials.
I mean, it's not bad. I'm gonna tell you how bad Memphis is. You talk about that water. I remember that water situation from the ice storm last year. But you know that it was weird. They say you couldn't drink the water, but you can bathe and take showers in it. And the largest organ on the human body is the skin. So I can't drink it, but the largest organ is exposed to the so-called contaminated water. Then I found out on news yesterday after the game that you got LLC out of town LLCs bound up all the real estate where people can't buy their first homes. People having a hard time trying to buy homes in Memphis that want to stay in Memphis because out of towns are bound up all the real estate to rent it out instead of letting people own their homes. Where is the where is the protection from the county and from the government?
Well, let me give you something we really need to hold people. Let me give you something else on top of that list. That's a good point.
Yeah.
All right. We don't have a black bank anymore. We don't have any black credit unions, and we have limited credit unions. What's going on? Well, under federal banking law, for all of the dollars they've got on their accounts, banks have to back it up with a certain percentage of cash. Yeah. Well, Memphis City Court, Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court, Shelby County, Bartlett, Cordova, Collierville, Germantown, Arlington, etc., deposited all of their money with First Tennessee. So First Tennessee had an enormous store of cash on deposit. So they had a huge account level they were entitled to exercise. Now, we have Bank of America, Wells Fargo. From outside banks, you have Regions that is expanded outside of Tennessee, but First Tennessee monopolized everything. Why are they allowing that? Particularly since it's no longer First Tennessee, it's First Horizon. Now, how about First Horizon? 1, it's not even a Tennessee corporation. 2, it's not even a U.S. corporation. 3, it's incorporated in Canada. So Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee is putting all of its money in the accounts of First Horizon, which allows it to have an enormously high account balance relative to loans, credit advancements, lines of credit, financing, etc. And we can't have a black credit union. We can't have a black bank, and the local white banks are jacked over because they don't have any of the city and county deposits in them so we can get local credit. Now, that is a damn shame. How about all of the Now, I went to a Lincoln Republican meeting back in 2014, and it was an interesting somebody who was the divorced wife of the former CEO of First Tennessee, and she was bragging about these things. She shouldn't have shot her mouth off because that's evidence, but they were bragging about how the grown children of certain black politicos were getting advantages that no other blacks in business were getting because daddies had been so cooperative. And by the way, the Lincoln Republicans, which is all lily white right now, is interesting. I showed some people their charter. They were shocked to discover that black folk had chartered the Lincoln Republicans because, as you and I have discussed, black people in this county were always Republican until the 1960s. So, wow, we whoopee. You mean to tell me that black people, African Americans, chartered the Lincoln Republicans? Yes, sir, they did. Jesus Christ, I'd never believed it if I hadn't read it. How many black members do you have? Right now, we don't have none. Don't you guys feel good that you have an organization that black folk founded for you? I just can't get over that. Now, not saying you should vote Republican, but I'm certainly saying you should vote anti-Democrat just to punish them so they feel what it's like when their water runs out, when their well runs dry. See, no other ethnicity in the history of this country has been so loyal to any one party as colored folk have been to the Democratic Party plantation.
Right.
They always occasionally shock the party that depends on them, and then, oh, no, we vote for the other guys. They ain't going to be that bad. You know, let's vote, hold your nose, and we'll vote now. You see what it feels like, and the other party says, we better court these people because it sure felt good when we got this little boost. And the folk just said, we better reconsider what we've not been giving these folk or delivering for these folk because it sure feels bad when we can't prop ourselves up with it. Now, the Democratic Party got founded in the second decade, beginning of the second decade of the 19th century. Why? To expand slavery into the Louisiana Purchase, which was the American territory from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean, and to protect slavery in the southern states. The Republican Party was founded, chartered in 1851 on the basis of being a party for abolition, that is, for the ending of slavery and for its containment. Now, granted, the Republican Party went over to big business and forgot about their colored, and the Democratic Party forgot about their white racist for a little while and went colored, and the white racists ran over to the Republican Party, and then the Republican Party lost big business when Bill Clinton recruited them to the Democratic Party. So now the Democratic Party is for the new religion that is the official state religion. It is for high finance, and it is essentially anti-black or black containment. Now, what do I mean about the new religion? These are considered legitimate religions under American law. Judaism, they go to synagogue. Christianity, they go to church. Islam, they go to mosque. Hinduism, they go to temple. Confucianism, Buddhism, Zen, etc., they go to temples. The interesting thing is the last several don't have a God. It's a system of philosophy. So what else is a system of philosophy that we have right now? A cult. LGBTQ. And the Russians are making a lot of political moves with this one. They said America is trying to push a new religion that is a poisonous one on the world.
Oh, Judge, I guess you muted. You got your mute on. You got you muted. We can't hear you. Oh, let me see. Trying to unmute the mic. Your mic isn't connected, Judge. Your mic, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Your mic's not connected. Okay, we can hear you
In other
now.
words, you go to any U.S. consulate, any U.S. embassy in the world, and you can see the American flag. Right below it, you see the flag of the new religion, the cult, LGBTQ, the rainbow flag. See what we're talking about? And that's against American law. So why do you think they're flying that cult flag? That's because it's their new religion. Just like Buddhism. They don't have God in Buddhism. Buddha was a man. And I listened to a lecture one time by his 37th grandchild removed.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make any pretext or pretense that he was a deity. He was the wise, friendly old prince who decided to try and make conditions better for humans. So anyway, under American law, LGBTQ qualifies as a religion. So if a diplomat goes to Washington, D.C., he sees rainbow sidewalks. Every restaurant close to or around downtown D.C. has a rainbow flag in the window, or rainbow tablecloths, or rainbow carpet leading up to the front door. Sidewalks are painted that way. Crosswalks are painted that way. You see the buildings with the rainbow flag with BLM on it, with, 15 floors up, and there's a banner that goes down on government buildings. What the hell? It looks like an official religion. You can't
Well,
teach Christianity in school, but you
okay.
see no cross under the flag. You see no six-pointed star under the flag. You see no crescent in a star under the flag, but you see rainbow. So you see, we have an official American religion. What is it
Well,
with the trannies?
let
But
me ask
let
you.
me explain that.
Mhm.
So before I forget it, I'm getting to be old man, but
You still in the game.
what is it with the trannies who are reading to these 2, 3, and 4 year olds in public library dressed up like harlot women? Well, one,
Mm-hmm.
it puts a negative image of womanhood in the child's head. It's deep in the child's subconscious, and it'll surface in years in the future. But anyway, human children are most susceptible to female parents until they are 8 years old, or to females.
Mm-hmm.
So a mother has a child. If she's Jewish, she puts him in his diapers and she takes him to synagogue. If it's Christian, he's or she's in diapers and goes to church. If it's Muslim, then they are in diapers and they go to mosque. If they're Hindu, they are in diapers and they go to temple. Well, these mothers, oh, either with hubby away at work, or there being no hubby at all in the home, they want their kids to have a jump up on education, so they want them to appreciate reading, so they take them to public libraries, and these males dressed up as harlots read to them. So the child isn't being taken to the holy place one day a week and falling asleep after 20 minutes. He's being taken 2, 3 times a week for a couple of hours at a throw and being read to. When he gets in kindergarten, they dealt with that down in Florida, where it's really called a parental rights bill that has been labeled "Just Say No to Gay." It doesn't say anything about that in there. And you get them from kindergarten through third grade that they banned in Florida without parental permission, on pain of personal liability and damages. And you've got teachers going at them 4, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, to do what is done to most children in a place of worship one day a week for about an hour, maybe two, but the kids sound asleep by then. And by the time they get 11 or 12, they're hopelessly stuck on this stuff. They're spreading the cult. And if you're patient, you don't need to persuade the adults if you have access to the children. Now, Aristotle, the famous philosopher, Greek philosopher, said, "Give me access to a child until he is 7, and I'll show you the man when he's grown." In other words, he knew, without having modern psychology or psychiatry at his beck and call, but just from experience and anecdotal observation, that if you train a child in a certain thing up until the time they're 7, that's them for life. Because with human children, their character is chiseled in granite by the time they're 8 years old. So they want access to these children, grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. What's 3rd grade? That's 8 years old. So between the time they're in kindergarten till they're 8 years old, when their personality is chiseled in stone, they want free access to cram this new religion down their throat. So you see it statistically, 1% of the American population is lesbian, 1.5% gay, male, gay, 4% bisexual, and less than 1%, 0.7% are trannies. But when you take the population 25 and under, you get 24% that identify with that. So you see, they've been propagandizing these people very successfully over the years. So they've got a new generation that has become converted to their new secular religion. And that's what you're saying that is so insane in DC politics and on the local level. It is no longer just a black and white thing. That black and white thing, so-called white supremacy, has become camouflaged, a smoke screen to cover up what's being done behind the scenes for the new religion. And by the way, a lot of gay folk think LGBTQ is a cult. What I mean by that? Well, this. Just because you're Islamic doesn't mean you support Al-Qaeda terrorism, does it? If you're a Christian, did you necessarily support Branch Davidian? That's that thing down in Waco, Texas. Did you support Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid? No. And as somebody mentioned today to me on the call-in show, said, we got a whole lot of folk talking about Kool-Aid and don't even know what the flavor is. So, you know, it's kind of crazy.
Right.
So we're getting a bill of goods run on us. And I heard this being set up 55 years ago at UCLA when I was an undergrad. I was a member of the class of 69. So we heard them get on the microphone at UCLA that had 70-some thousand full-time grad and undergrad students. That's a small city. We had a PA system where all you had to do was go let the grounds know that you wanted to use the public address system, and everybody could step up literally on the box with the supports around it, and you could harangue the audience. And they were talking about the lesbians who hated men, the feminists who hated that they weren't men, the gays that hated that they couldn't understand being a man, the beta boys that hated that they weren't real men, and then the anti-war crowd that said that war is a man thing and the way to stop war was to get rid of masculinity, so boys were raised as girls so they would become emotional and be able to vent their hostility and aggression instead of being so uptight and under self-control and causing war. So no more war toys, no cap guns, no water pistols. When's the last time you seen a cap gun in a toy store? Yeah.
Oh, it makes you look like a toy. It makes you, they let you know it's a toy. You know how to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, aside from that, they still don't sell cap guns now. They sell other stuff. Water pistols. The other thing is okay, no way, while we have to dress the boys and the girls in unisex clothing and unisex rear them and get the boys with long hair and curl it and put braids in their hair, which in Africa is not masculine. It's okay to wear dreads, but not braids. They look at you like Hey, man, are you trying to be a girl, man? Why you braid your hair like that, man? But you see, all of the little boys that have their hair braided cutely by their mamas, I guess it keeps them from having to bond with their sons by combing and brushing their kinky hair.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks so cute to them. And sometimes you go up and say, "Oh, isn't she cute?" "Oh, no, no, it's a he. That's a boy." "Oh,
Now, Joe, let me
I'm
ask you this.
sorry."
You speaking of women and it's Mother's Day. I got to ask you about this Roe v. Wade supposed leak
Oh,
about the
well, let me tell you
reversal.
what's going on.
Okay.
Draft opinion does not mean that's going to be the Supreme Court's decision. It happens all the time. And Alito is not going to be the one, I suspect, to write the majority opinion. He's not the brightest bulb in there. Okay? Next thing, it's a trap. The
Okay.
Biden administration has their inside Confederates who have gotten a hold of that, and they put it out in public because they want to galvanize the public to turn out heavily so the far right doesn't intrude anymore, because the ratings of this Biden administration are so low. Well, they're the lowest ever in the last half century. And every time an administration has had ratings that low, if they're in control of one chamber of Congress, they lose it. That would be the House. And if they are marginal in another one, they fall further behind, and that would be the Senate. So there are all kinds of things, including impeachment against Biden for what he did as a vice president, and probably the votes to convict him for real offenses under uh, Section 2, uh, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. So they might really get a mess. And under the 12th Amendment, if you were actually convicted on articles of impeachment, you can never hold an office again. Now, when they brought Trump in, it was for bribery, treason, or felonies and misdemeanors, high crimes and misdemeanors in office. Were any of those three things charged? No, it was obstruction of Congress, but that's no crime. But then again, that didn't even make it to the floor in the Senate. You know why? Article 1 of the Constitution says there shall be two chambers in Congress. One shall be known as the Senate, and the other shall be known as the House of Representatives. So when it came in, they just took an informal poll. Any of you guys think you got obstructed? No. Well, since the Senate was majority Republican at the time, that didn't even get past the front door. So that was out. He obstructed Congress. Is that bribery? No. Is that treason? No. Is that high crimes and misdemeanors? No. There's no such offense under American law or state law. So that's out. So you just wasted everybody's time grandstanding. But you really messed up when you went after Trump after he was no longer president. So you set the precedent that you can impeach someone for actions taken in an office they no longer hold. That would mean Biden. Now, part of the Constitution itself says part of the supreme law of the land shall be such treaties as have been ratified by the Senate. Well, we have a suite of those with Ukraine that says we shall participate in the investigation of criminality, the apprehension of criminal elements or persons, and the extradition thereof. So Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are listed by name in multiple counts of 100+ count indictment into Ukraine for bribery, subornation of treason, perjury, subornation of perjury, for extortion, and for a number of other felonies and crimes. So since we have a treaty with them that says we respect each other's criminal laws, while Whoopi Biden's in trouble for what he did as vice president. By the way, they could proceed against Obama. And what is he supposed to be guilty of? Well, aside from what he was an accessory to feloniously when it came to his son, crackhead son's activities. That's separate and apart, but it's part of what can be considered. He got up on a C-SPAN conference January, I think it was 13th or 14th, 3 years ago, and I've heard it several times. He said, I guess I'm guilty of bribery because I threatened them. I said, we will withhold our $14 billion in loan guarantees if they don't back this guy up off of my son. Now, because impeachment and conviction thereof are civil, not criminal penalties, the standard is not beyond a reasonable doubt with a presumption of innocence. The standard is civil. What's that? By the preponderance of evidence, it's shown that it's more likely than not. Now, under American law, the standard of proof to set forth probable cause to indict somebody is about equal to what you need in a civil case to establish preponderance of evidence. So if they establish by preponderance of evidence, Biden can wind up being the first U.S. president actually impeached and convicted, and so could Obama. Well, the 12th Amendment says they shall be stripped of all benefits and ineligible to hold another office. So what happens to Biden if that happens before the next election comes, and it's more than 24 months before that happens, in other words, half the term, he wouldn't be eligible to run for president again, and that would throw it on Kamala Harris, who has the absolute lowest rating of a president or vice president in 50 years. Spiro Agnew, who was the president for Tricky Dick Nixon, vice president, and got convicted of multiple state and federal crimes and actually did time in state and federal penitentiaries, his ratings weren't even that bad after he got indicted and convicted. So do you want, that's what you're stuck with? Wow, we whoopee. And what about Obama? He's no longer president, but you impeached Trump, but you couldn't get a conviction after he became private citizen again, just like Obama. But what does that mean? He would no longer be entitled to the benefits, the pension, the perks, the presidential library that go to retired presidents or defeated presidents. So it might be interesting. You know, I said this to you before. Be careful what the hell you ask for. You just might get it. Now, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah, Joe, I saw you.
I've got to do myself.
Yeah.
Dana's going to be mad at me.
Well, she actually in the chat, and I want to get, I'm glad, shout out to the real Dana. I just, two more things. I got to ask you about the Kevin Samuels, because I know I heard the show you did with Dana, and he called in about 2 years ago, and he's 53, he died at 53, but they keep on saying 56 and 57. Do you have any quick thoughts about his life and death?
Well, let's put it this way. I know the family's attorney personally. He's a friend of mine. So I can't comment on anything I heard. But let's put it this way. It has been said that water runs off the back of a duck. If the water doesn't run off, something's wrong with the duck. So he respected women, but he did simply what preachers used to do. They talked about sin. And when they talk about sin, what happens is you're supposed to listen carefully and correct your evil ways. But a lot of people fell into the trap of disliking him because he was telling on them. He always respected women. He respected his mother quite well. I know he spoke highly of her. We've talked on the phone once or twice. And he really didn't do much more than what I do. The only thing was she didn't have the gravitas of yours truly. And the fan base he had contained too many friends of the fan base that didn't like being talked about. Now, on my Twitter page, it's running 19 out of 20 in favor of the deceased. May he rest in peace. And maybe 1 out of 20 who's against him. And I would say the majority of the people that are saying he did well are women. They say, we don't agree with somebody stripping on a table in public and twerking. That's disgusting. That is not appropriate. So when he's talking about that, we agree. When he's saying women shouldn't act like this, nor should men, then that's just even-handed justice and equity when it comes to pontificating about appropriate standards. So I don't have any problems with what the brother was saying. I'm just sad that we had a younger person, and I called somebody 50 younger, who is no longer with us, who had the courage to speak against the tide.
But he like you're also a very polarizing figure yourself, Judge. You see like
of course,
how people responded to him in his passing, because you see that happening not anytime soon, of course.
Oh, I know a lot of people would hate on me if I croaked tomorrow, but I don't give a damn. It's like there's a funny thing about what I do, and probably about him, is eventually people say, you know what? I thought he was crazy, but the judge was right. Remember years ago when I started talking about that half-breed bush bunny from Kenya?
Right.
Barack Obama, Bathhouse Berry. Everybody was saying, you're right. And now how many people are saying, you know, he really wasn't, he didn't do a damn thing for us. And I was saying he ain't doing a damn thing for us. It's a waste of our time. I've been saying that for decades. Well, decade? Yeah, this is 2021. So that's the third decade of the 21st century. So I've been saying it since he's been or was running for office 2007. So that's one decade. When he was holding office in the teens, that was the second decade. I've been saying that for 3 decades. He wasn't shit.
Well,
he didn't do a damn thing.
We had an audience question like, Judge Joe, how do we make Malcolm X a holiday? Give him a holiday. Is it possible to write?
Well, you need to get it passed from Congress if you wanted a national holiday. But Malcolm X advocated action. The rest of them, we want to be down on our knees or holding hands singing while somebody jacks us up until somebody else feels guilty. So we don't want to encourage the Negroes to be unruly.
So also, and wrap it up, I'm glad. Appreciate your time, Judge.
Here, boy. Here, boy. Come, boy. Roll over. Let me scratch your tummy. Okay, here's a bacon bit.
We got to talk about
then here we go.
Yeah, we got to do a show.
Wait a minute. This is a joke. Every day in America, a Negro is abused by his owner. For $19 a month, you can stop this from happening. Send in $19. So no more Negroes will be abused by their owners, to wit the Republican Party. To wit the Democratic Party. Basically the Democrats. So the Republicans are just kind of like, you go down and you sign up for a hunt. Well, the people that run the preserve, they bring out the dogs, they own the dogs, and the Democrats own the Negro. So save the Negro from being abused by his master. Send $19 a month. That's also for the elephants and the tigers and all this other stuff. And what was it? Send in $19 a month to save a starving African child, Right. So I guess we are in that category.
We know the sad thing about it. The sad thing, Malcolm told us all about the Democrats 60 years ago, and we still ain't learned our lesson. Some 60 years later, he went into the Democrats. Almost 60 years ago.
Now, I got to get off before Dana talks about me badly.
Especially
since she's on to listen.
Go ahead.
One more
question.
Ain't my fault, Miss Dana. They made a mistake.
Right, it's my fault. But I'll actually schedule early, but there's no. I appreciate you taking the time anyway. But Dave Chappelle, I got to ask you about the Dave Chappelle Hollywood Bowl incident. He had fired security. I think they should be fired. They did a poor job of protecting Dave. But what's your take on that?
They should. And where I've had security bodyguards and some of the best in the world. And I had a personal friend that I used to work for that wound up working for me as a co-executive producer on my show. And he was sort of unofficial security because he was a real live badass. Grandmaster Dr. Clifford Stewart of Los
Right. Rest in
Angeles that
peace.
Black Belt magazine said was probably, you know who I'm talking about,
Yeah, really, he a great man. I
probably the
mean,
most
legend.
dangerous human alive in North America. So
Yes,
you know
sir.
what his assessment of the weakest link in anybody's security was? Is the
What?
damn limo drivers that you couldn't depend on. So key
Hmm.
one is get a good limo driver, and two, he would have fired every one of these ignorant son of a bitches and let that fool get up on the stage without knocking him down. Now, Chappelle is kind of athletic, so he dodged the guy who charged him, and he got jacked up and an arm broken, which is, you know, a freebie to beat his ass real good. That was a freebie. Now, I'm not speaking as a judge. I'm just Joe Brown, who has a lifetime title now, thanks to the governor of Tennessee, Judge Joe Brown, you know. So it is what it is. Somebody presents an opportunity, vent your frustration and aggression, and Jamie Foxx jumped in, and Chris Rock was there, and he got to make a comeback at that sissy ass Will Smith bullshit. And he said, "I guess she tried to pull off Will Smith or something like that."
So we got a little bit of time.
The
Jada
real
got
Dana
here.
says, "Tell him put it back 7 p.m. his
Yeah, she
time."
did. Hey, I
Thank you.
appreciate it,
So,
Dana. Thank you.
I like this picture of Dana she got up
Oh yeah, I
there.
mean she's a
Yeah.
good looking woman, but I really enjoyed the
Oh
conversation
yeah.
you had with Kevin Samuels, that impromptu, and Dana. I mean, she don't get enough credit for doing that. I mean, she's got an amazing platform. In my opinion, I think she's on our side as black men. I think she tried to
Yeah,
have
well, let's put
a
it this
understanding
way.
of our
I
people.
admire Miss Dana a hell of a lot. She goes through a lot of changes to do what she does. She's a grandmother, several
I mean, good
times
looking
over.
grandmama. Like she ain't the normal standard.
Yeah, grandmama can
I
be
call her
hot.
Jersey Red,
Yeah,
but I got now,
yeah.
Judge. I met Dave
Well,
Chappelle.
one thing I
Yeah,
want people to do, understand, she and I, we aren't really fighting because we talk a lot,
right.
2 or 3 hours at a time off the,
Yeah, four
off the
hours
show
sometimes.
on the
Yeah,
phone. So she's just being a woman, but you have to understand that they're going to do their thing, and you have to do your thing as a man, which is be strong and be indulgent sometimes, but sometimes you have to put your foot down. And occasionally I do have to confess I've raised my voice to her when we're on the phone. So that's my thing. And I have to be settled and kind of fixed in my ways of being an alpha male. They tell me that. So I'm not trying to boast, but there's a thing about, are you going to get run over by a woman? Or are you going to say ain't going to be no shit like that? I'm supposed to be in charge of protecting them. So I got to make everybody used to the idea that because when the shit hits the fan, ain't no time to debate on who's going to be in charge. Everybody has to be well versed, adapted, and used to the military commander being in charge. So every now and then you have to assert that. Like Native American chief told me when I visited him in Montana, he said, "Judge," he said, back when the 7th Cavalry was coming over to try and exterminate some more of us Indians, and they were 4 hills away, we didn't have time to say, "Squaw, let's move." And she'd say, "I ain't ready. I'm trying to grind my corn." No, pack your ass up right now and move, because you will be dead quickly and it won't make any damn difference. So we have to occasionally assert ourselves as being in charge, so they get used to the idea of when we say we need to be listened to now, it's like you do with the children. It's like, "I'll explain later, but mama said this is what you're going to do." So when the children look at when daddy says this is what's going to happen right now, we'll talk about it later, they get the idea from looking.
I gotta ask you because I know I had I mean we got a little bit of time. the Dave Chappelle thing. I met Dave twice, and there was no security around. I met him like over 20, almost 20 years ago. This year, with the Tyson Lewis fight in Memphis, he was at the Peabody doing correspondent work for Jay Leno Tonight Show, but he was by himself in the corner. Nobody knew who he was really until the next year when the Chappelle Show came out, and he was very approachable. Then I saw him in Dick Gregory's homegoing or wake at Howard University back in 2017. Very approachable guy, very cool guy. But it is weird you talking about the limo driver. I'm thinking about President Kennedy when the Secret Service failed him in Dallas, and the driver was William Greer. He was an older, I think he was in his 60s actually. I think the guy was that drove Kennedy's limo. He actually slowed down so they got the kill shot on Kennedy, which was crazy to me.
Well, some Dallas detectives and I went over that scene, including the guy that discovered the rifle up in the Eyrie, and he didn't buy that was the source of the fatal shot.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you about this. Down on the ground, they actually had the actual limo with the bullet holes still in it. They'd scrubbed the blood out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Still some traces. And when we got down on the ground from that railroad bridge that had 7 rail tracks running across it, and there was only one cop up there, and he was facing the parade as per the photographic evidence. And there were 3 boxcars up there. Well, when the car is running toward that bridge, it's on the exact same level as that bridge. So there's no downward angle, there's no offset, no need to lead. It's a straight on point blank shot for 1,000, 2, 1,000 until you count to 7, which is easy shot for anybody that has passed basic training in shooting a rifle. The X thing is based on some experimental stuff. If the bullet hit the front window glass from the rear at the magic bullet, it would have bulged the glass out like someone's head hit it. If a bullet hits it from the front back, there's a nice clean hole. In that window, there's a nice clean hole. What these detectives did is brought out the carbon fiber rods that they used to angle the shots, and they had some styrofoam dummies of the governor and Kennedy positioned with the locations of the bullet holes in there. So what they did is they took the styrofoam dummies and took the Sharpie marks and they drilled them through the dummies. Mm-hmm. And when they put the carbon fiber rod through the hole in the windshield, through the governor where he got shot, and Kennedy, the bullet lines up with, guess where? The bridge. And at the time this happened, there were some openings in the bridge because there's a catwalk through the bridge that was put there back in the 19th century when gas lines went through there to feed the gas lights that were used to light up urban Dallas, Texas. So the thing with the grassy knoll, impossible. You know why?
Why?
Because if the shooter was from there, he would have had that count on nobody standing between him and Kennedy. So even if you get 10 feet above that, you still don't have a shot because we saw and measured over and over again when the limo comes by, Kennedy's head would have been chest high for most people who were standing on the side of the road looking at the parade. He couldn't have had a clear shot. But what we did come up with was this. If somebody actually had a rifle, he could take the bolt out, which is damn near instantaneous, drop the bolt and the rifle down through the grating right at the grassy knoll, and there is a tunnel that most people would just have to bend over slightly that's clear for 430 yards under the rail yard into a vacant weed infested semi-desert area on the other side. The first detective on the scene who found the rifle told me, he said, I don't think it was James Earl Ray. He said,
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey
They're all
Oswald.
the same. They get confused. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, one thing, is you couldn't just summon the elevator. It was from the 19th century. It was one of the first. You had to walk up and physically get the elevator or down. Now, when we went out, we saw that the elevator was on the top floor. So when we came out, you have to go from one side of the building down the first floor hallway to the staircase on the far side to go up to the Eyrie. He said, Lee Harvey was walking toward me, and I stopped him. I said, "Who are you?" And the building superintendent said, "Oh, he works here." So just when I was talking to him, I noticed that the elevator, old time type with that clock hand that goes down, said it was moving past, which meant somebody was on that elevator and it went to the basement. I'm looking at Lee Harvey as the elevator goes by, and Lee Harvey looked very damn nervous, and he left. Now, he said, I went up there and I found the rifle, and I got on the horn and told people about it. We blocked it off with the yellow tape. He said, I know because I'm the one that assisted in taking the fingerprints. He said there was an identifiable fingerprint fresh on the buttstock of the Carcano rifle. He said, and it was not Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprint. Now, some years later, under the Freedom of Information Act and a piece of legislation that Congress passed, George Herbert Walker Bush signed an executive order to facilitate, and so did Bill Clinton as president. He said, we got a print. The print was from the same individual that left the print on the buttstock. We knew who the guy was. He was a hitman. And some interesting stuff came out of this. He said the medical examiner who did the autopsy on Kennedy was a funeral director privately and owned the biggest funeral mortuary service in Texas. He had several graveyards that he owned.
He did on Oswald, right? He did the autopsy on Oswald, or the
on Kennedy. He did the one on Kennedy. He was a medical examiner for the state of Texas. So he said, I helped arrest him. I said, you arrested the medical examiner? He said, yeah, we had all these unsolved hits. And somebody got burnt up pretty bad, but they survived and identified the medical examiner as the person that shot him 5 times.
Yeah, it sounds like Texas.
So we arrested him, and we had him in the Dallas County Jail, same place we had Lee Harvey. Now, we were taking him to the courthouse, and he supposedly tried to escape and got shot 14 times. He said, well, I wasn't there for that autopsy, but I was told the cause of death was by gunshot. So he was supposedly buried in his cemetery. Now, 4 months ago, we got an order of an exhumation. We went and dug up his so-called coffin, but there was no body in it. And he like, whoa. And then the guy that supposedly left this print, who we know, he's interesting. He graduated at the top of his class from high school. He was standing first in his class as a sophomore in college. He was captain of the football team, captain of the baseball team. He was a war hero, and when he came back, he was quickly charged with first-degree murder when he shot a man in the head 5 times in front of 40-some witnesses in broad daylight in a cafe. He was sentenced to die by hanging. But in 6 weeks, the governor commuted his sentence to time served and reduced the charge to voluntary manslaughter. So we have been looking at him for a long time. So what happened is our records show he supposedly died in a 1-car wreck in broad daylight, passing through the Texas highway, passing down a Texas highway in the Texas desert. And he was buried in this graveyard that this guy who was the medical examiner owned. So they showed me a copy of the exhumation order on him. Nobody in the ground. So
Right now,
that's
Judge, his name
two.
wasn't Malcolm Wallace, right? It wasn't Malcolm Wallace.
No,
Okay.
it wasn't Malcolm Wallace. And by the way, Marie Brown, the late Mary Brown,
Madeline Brown, yeah.
she was Marie Brown. She had a son by LBJ in 1965 and introduced me to the boy he had in 1966 by a black White House secretary. I met both young men 20-some years ago. They look just like LBJ, except one of them is kind of paper bag brownish. And it's interesting. She said that LBJ discussed this with her. He just said, God damn. He said, I think they're going to get rid of the Catholic son of a bitch. He said, I don't like this. He said, this is just flat wrong. And the person he mentioned, she gave me the name, and it was the same name that the detectives brought up, that the fingerprint on the Carcano rifle belonged to. So this is the one they had exhumed only to find there was no body.
Well, Judge, let me ask you like this because this is man, it's always an inside job with me on all these things, like with the MLK thing. But I know you're on time. But I gotta ask you about the Chappelle thing. The way the guy who attacked him was charged with a misdemeanor. Was that correct call to charge him with misdemeanor?
Yeah, it was an attempted assault and battery under
But he had a
California
knife
law.
though. He actually had a blade, and he could have
Well,
actually used it on him.
if he had it on his person, somebody could submit him for indictment on a felony. We don't know if he was going to pull it out. And I think the DA in Los Angeles is likely to do that because there is a recall position against him for being too soft on crime that's to be heard during these midterm elections coming up. So that individual might go in front of a grand jury and get
But Judge,
criminal attempt to wit murder or assault with a deadly weapon.
I think it should be there because how can a guy who said that his grandma was a victim of gentrification and eviction, who had no means of support allegedly, get into a high-priced venue like the Hollywood Bowl with access to Dave Chappelle like that?
There's no need to explain that. The Hollywood Bowl is set against the side of a hill.
Okay.
And there is forest that comes down on both sides. All somebody has to do is go through the back way where the stage is, hop the fence that is not really a barricade after wading through the foliage and get in there, and you got free access to the stage. So I can understand how he got in there. Matter of fact, my high school graduation was from the Hollywood Bowl.
And Joe, I gotta ask you, I know we brought up Kevin Samuels before you get out of here. I got to get your take. I know you probably, because you a legal guy, but the circumstances of Kevin Samuels' death, the way he was found or who he was found with, the young nurse who he allegedly met the night before, he has an alleged heart attack. And then
Let me say this. I know the family lawyers, so it would not be appropriate to discuss. But let's just say this. Once again, what you're reading may not be accurate.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Also, you can even ask Dana about this. You're interviewing, and every show you do, you drink at least 3 Red Bulls. That's a whole lot of stimulant. And there are some questions out there about drinking mixed drinks where the main ingredient is Red Bull, that just drinking them. You got a lot of stress. It's a good way to get a heart attack.
I know he was a cancer survivor too. I think he underwent chemo at one point. And some people say he had heart issues because of that. I don't know, but I had a friend, Mr. A.L.L Jr., who used to work for Isaac Hayes. He was a band director at Manassas and the founder of the Southern Heritage Classic. He would always tell me, Ron, nobody dies a natural death in show business. There's always
Well,
some tricky stuff
let me
going
put
on.
it this way. There's a local I've told you about owes me 5,000 in cash, and preacher man who is also the singer snorted it up according to his secretary. And the last two times I ran into him at Memphis airport, he turned around and ran back down to B concourse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know. I will say this. In the 15 years I was in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's very stressful because people are trying to backstab you at every chance they get. It's not
Yes, sir.
about making money. They have an agenda, and if you don't match their agenda, they want to take you down. Now, let's put it this way. If you saw me, sometimes I would have security out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And out of town was outside of Los Angeles because I had a permit to carry in California that I got through Ventura County, being the only one of only 3 counties where they would issue those things to ordinary people, because they certainly wouldn't in L.A.
Yes, sir.
And I have one here. So most of the time when you see me, even now, I'm alone. But to give you the comparison, the last 3 or 4 years I did my show, I had better ratings than Oprah did. So I was higher in the ratings than Oprah Winfrey. I was higher than Dr. Phil. And I brought in more money to Viacom and CBS and had higher ratings than Chappelle did. See,
Mm.
they tried to just ignore me. Yet sometimes I was the #1 syndicated show in America. Now, did I have security? Sometimes, but not often.
Yes, sir.
So it's kind of like, bring it on. You know, if you die of old age, you shit all over yourself, vomit, you feel sick as hell, it's hard to breathe, everything aches. What better way than to get it over with quickly and maybe take somebody to Valhalla with you so they can wait on you for eternity?
Or also come and go at the same time. You know, dying while
Yeah, what's
having
what I'm saying?
intercourse.
Take somebody with you.
I'm talking about having intercourse too. To die like that is
Oh, yeah.
you
Well,
come and
actually,
go at the
there's an
same
old
time.
family friend. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. There's an old family friend, and he and his wife got divorced, and his wife was my mother's best friend at the time.
Uh-huh.
And his nickname was Stud Horse Taylor. He used to go to Tennessee A&I, which is now Tennessee State. And
Oh,
he and his wife kept getting back together, and they were in a motel hooking back up, and he busted out on the downstroke, you know. So what the hell? It happens.
Well, Judge, ain't gonna hold your judge. Thank you so much. We want you to support what you do as well. Get y'all that good old Judge Joe Brown barbecue sauce. You be the judge on that
And
one.
by the way, I'm inviting you to come to the barbecue cooking contest. We'll have a booth next week. So check it out.
All
You
right.
can get the sauce, yes, and it will be on the store shelves shortly, but you can order the stuff, jjbbbq.com. And I'm in the business of service and sauce. For service, it's JJB in 2023 for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, send Brown downtown. If they replace these damn voting machines, because I ain't wasting any money if they're not going to do that. And the other thing is get yourself some sauce. And with it, it's so versatile on everything. You can put it on French fries and salads, and guess what? You can cook greens with it. And there's even a good substitute for a Bloody Mary. Get JJBBBQ sauce, the regular stuff, put some ice and vodka in it, and put you a stick of celery in there, and you got a hell of a substitute that's a lot better than a Bloody Mary.
Thank you, Judge,
Enjoy
so much.
yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We love you madly. Take care of yourself. You are a true treasure indeed. And we want you
All
around
right,
for a
young
long
man.
time. Take care, sir.
I'm out of here so
Yes,
Dana
sir.
doesn't take me out. Let me
Yeah, she be all right. And thank y'all for tuning in to this wonderful, edutaining, entertaining edition of We All Be. And happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day to y'all. And know we all be in it to win it. If you like the support and you like the words of Brother Hurd or his guest, the Honorable Judge Joe Brown, please spread the word. We All Be TV on YouTube. You can cash out your support, $ R2C2H2. You can also Google Pay, PayPal, and Zelle your support at R2C2H2 at gmail.com. You can Vimo it at R2C2H2. You can buy and wear art of his art. I got this Robert Johnson artwork on. This is my art. Go down below the video description box to our official Teespring official website link. You know, it's Robert Johnson's birthday today, May 8th. He was born May 8th, 1911. And he died August the 16th, 1938. Some people think he made a deal with the devil. But like I told Judge Joe Brown, nobody dies a natural death in show business. So I hope y'all got a little bit out of it. Also, you go buy art of his art at r2c2h2.com. And thank you all for chilling or connecting. Judge is very much in demand. I don't know if he drinking Red Bulls because he do back to back shows. You know, and he always like a pretty face. I mean, not mine, but Dana's, of course, but always a joy. And we got to, you know, seize these moments and enjoy these ancestors. I mean, ancestors, but these eldars. You got some old folks, they're not always elders, you know. You got a lot of olders, rather than some elders, but you know, help Judge on. I may not always agree with some of his assessments and stuff, you know, but it's just good to have a platform where you can have somebody of that stature come on and bless it and bless the people in return. So thank you so much, y'all. I always have interesting Mother Day things going on every Mother Day thing. So words of great Duke Ellington. We love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing. Also, just seize the moment, make the most of what you have now, because that's all we have is the present. And that's why it's called the present, because it's a gift. So thank you to the moderators, thank you to the listeners and supporters. And until next time, take care. Da, 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 da.